Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero? We've all been hearing about the microbiome and how important it is for our health. It's kind of funny, right? Only 10 years ago, we believed that killing the bacteria on everything was the way to go. I mean, do you remember those sanitizer sprays everywhere? And now we're gradually learning that, surprise, surprise, not really, we actually need the bacteria around us to thrive and even survive. The thing is that everybody's been focusing almost exclusively on the bacteria in your body that helps you digest food. And that is really important because if you can't digest it, you can't live off of the nutrients, and then you develop all sort of GI problems and you have to... Never mind. But research has been showing us an incredible connection between bacteria in your gut and your mental health. Seriously. For instance, studies have shown that the bacteria in the gut of an animal can change its level of depression. And more research is coming out showing that the same exact thing probably plays a role in anxiety, depression, maybe even autism and ADHD. Isn't that amazing? So I did some research and I decided to add a probiotic mix that helps not only mood, but also the communication between my gut and the brain. It's called Amare, and their wellness kit takes care of everything that I need. The probiotics that have been researched to provide actual tangible help, and the prebiotics and everything that those bacteria need to thrive and do their work. I've been using it myself for 3 months, and I gotta say, it's really helped regulate my mood and keep me even. And it's helping me feel less foggy too, especially in the morning. Look, these guys really did their research, and this stuff is top notch. If you want to get it for yourself, just follow the link in our show notes and you can join the Mind Biome Revolution with me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Recovery Secrets podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe, and I'm back here with you today. I'm in Nashville. I'm in Nashville for a conference, and I think I've talked about it here before, but I'm one of those people who, even though I spend 80 to 90% of my working time in a room, no longer by myself because I have Maddie, my executive assistant, so I'm happy for that, but almost essentially by myself. I use these sort of events throughout the year, probably 3, 4, 5 times a year, in order to really uplift me. And part of the reason I'm talking about it here is what I realized yesterday as I'm sitting at this event is that coming up here soon, we will be announcing an Ignited Recovery live event in Los Angeles. And the reason I'm saying that, I'm excited to start planning it, is things work differently in person than online. I know it's true. I've always known it's true. That's why all the work I did before Ignited was all in person. And I still see people in person, and they come into the office, and couples and individuals, and we talk and we help them work through trouble. And there is a power to being in person that, while the online world and the web allows us to magnify the impact by reaching out to just thousands and tens of thousands and millions of people that would not be able to see us close in person, there is still a power to all getting together. So I'm here at this event at Funnel Hacking Live, and meeting and seeing friends that I haven't seen in a long time, seeing really impressive and inspiring speakers, and I want to do the same for you guys, for our Ignited Recovery community. So I'm really excited. We will be in the planning stages, but my guess is that the first small-ish event will be happening in the spring or early summer of this year. So stay tuned for that. That's not the topic I want to talk about, though. Primarily today, the topic I want to talk about today is forgiveness. Forgiveness. All of us, we talked last week about perspective and things that happen to us in life that have depressed us, caused us anxiety or stress, things that have brought us down and that we regret. And just like we've had things like that happen to us that we have done, like that dating faux pas thing that I talked about last time, we've also had other people wrong us or other people who we believe have done us wrong. And hopefully by now, if you've been listening, you understand that part of this is a matter of perspective, right? I do believe that a lot of people who I believe had done me wrong or have somehow overstepped bounds, broken boundaries, broken promises. If I looked at things, if I was able to see things from their perspective, that I would see it differently, literally, that I would maybe not even think that they had wronged me in any way, if I could really lock in from their perspective, which is something I try to do on a regular basis. But then, yes, there are also other people that maybe intentionally tried to quote unquote wrong me, maybe intentionally tried to take advantage or break promises because they no longer wanted to keep them, whatever. I myself have been burdened in the past with feelings of resentment and stress and anxiety around those experiences. And I got to tell you, you know this because this has happened in your own life, that those feelings of resentment, anger, frustration at other people can sometimes be your own downfall, right? Sometimes they by themselves, those feelings that you harbor for other people in your life because of these sorts of events can end up being one of the major causes of stress in your life. And I want to give you one specific example and the way that it played out, because this played a huge role in a huge role in my life. It would be impossible to overstate this. But, my father, you guys know about the cheating issues that Sophie and I have had. You know, Cheating came with my family. My father cheated. And there was one specific night. I was about 8 or 9 years old, which literally, as I'm telling the story, reminds me of maybe why I was starting to doubt myself around the same age. But at about 8 or 9 years old, I had my own room at that point. So I wake up in the morning, not in the morning, like in the middle of the night, and I'm thirsty. So I go to walk out of the room into our corridor, which would then lead me to the kitchen, and it's pitch black outside as it would be any night, right? And I look to the left. I remember just literally peering out to the left, and I see my mom and my dad standing there. I can literally, if I close my eyes right now, I can literally still see it. That's how strong the memory is. And they're standing there. My dad's in full uniform with a suitcase in his hand, and my mom is talking to him, and it's obviously not a good conversation, right? It's very clear the conversation is not going well. I try to listen. I can't really understand what they're saying because they're not speaking very loudly. I don't really know, but it's clear that I should not walk out of that room. Or at least it was clear to me that I should not walk out of that room in the moment. And so I kind of look around for a little bit, try to listen, can't hear anything, confused, and I just go back to bed and I lay down. And the next morning when I woke up, my mom woke my sister and I up, brought us in the same room. We were sleeping in separate rooms by that point, and said that my dad left. We were like, what do you mean that? Like, where did he go? My dad would travel a lot, but he'd go for work. She said, no, he's gone. No, he's gone forever. He's not coming back. And we both start bawling, and bawling. My sister, daddy daughter relationship, just bawling. I'm crying. What do you mean? What's going on? Da, da, da. Whatever. My mom's tried to explain it, but we got to go to school. We go to school. Within a couple of days, my dad came back. They resolved their issues. I don't really know in the moment what happened around that, but nothing was ever spoken of it again, right? So like he came back home, and it just was this thing that nobody talked about in my family. But it was traumatic. I mean, when I say I've never been through trauma, that is one of the ones that I had in early childhood that definitely felt traumatic, even though it only lasted like 2 days. The reason I'm bringing it up here is not because of that singular moment, but it's because of the deep hatred that I developed for my dad around that for, honestly, guys, about 20 years. For about 20 years, I had the deepest resentment, and it would keep coming up because, I would talk to my mom. I would grow up, and my mom would start confiding in me. Maybe that's why I ended up going into psychology, but I would have a sense of the devastation at that moment, those days, and probably the ongoing experiences that my mom had with my dad for years, for decades. And that caused me to really, when I say this, I don't mean it lightly, and I'm not saying it facetiously, but hate my dad for years and probably over a decade, and drove me many, many times to do things in spite of, because they would upset him, knowing full well that I'm doing it to get back at him, not necessarily for that moment, but because I had this hatred for him. And so when I say that the resentment, anger, etc., that we have towards others can literally become the primary motivating force in our life, a motivating force for bad, oftentimes, right? For improper action, for behavior that doesn't really serve us, but feels like it serves to acquiesce, to reduce, to address that pain. Um, it's incalculable what impact that had on me, right? I don't know that I would have started drinking as early and as heavily if it wasn't for that. I don't know that I would have transitioned to harder drugs if it wasn't for that. I don't know that I would have moved to the other side of the country where I could become a drug dealer and develop this life that my parents didn't know of and I could lie about because I was literally 5,000, 4,000 miles away. Um, all because A, that event happened. B, I had no way of processing it with anybody, so I just developed my own story about it in my own head and then kept building it and building it and building it. And C, because up until the last 5 to 10 years of his life, I didn't get a chance to process forgiveness with my dad. I hope that as you guys are listening to this, you're already connecting to some of the ways in which you've had the exact same experience with other people in your life. Because I know you have. We've all had it. And, I got to say, forgiveness as a concept was not something that was taught broadly around me. Um, Forgiveness was not something that people mentioned either had this magical power or even taught me how to go through, right? Forgiveness is this really personal thing that we can only do with ourselves. And if we really want to take it to another level, we can express and share that forgiveness once we have decided to take it on, because it is a decision with the people who we've held the resentment against. And obviously, you guys know that with everything that Sophie and I have gone through, that forgiveness has had to be a huge part of our story, right? We wouldn't be here right now. Well, Sophie's not really next to me right now, but we wouldn't be in this place in our relationship if we didn't have forgiveness. We just wouldn't. It wouldn't. We can do all the work, right? We've talked about work, we've talked about the trust building, etc. But at the core of all of it, at the beginning, is forgiveness, right? Even, and I'll talk about this, I marked it for myself to talk about it in that relationship, but even in the moment where Sophie flipped the tables on me and had infidelity of her own, the first thing I had to focus on over everything else is forgiveness. And then you can go do the work. And, you guys have noticed recently, and I hope this hasn't been too noisy for you all, but you noticed recently that at the end of a lot of these, I like to challenge you guys. I like to challenge you guys to not just listen to these, but to apply them and to make use of the tools and the concepts in your own life. And so here's this week's challenge. It's pretty simple. I challenge you to pick at least one, you can pick more, but at least one of these resentments, these relationships that are fraught with anger, pain, and past suffering for you, where you blame the other person for it. We can talk about self-forgiveness another time, but let's do the work of forgiving somebody else, right? Let's take the action of purposefully and deliberately saying, I am going to make a choice to forgive, fill in the blank, for filling the next blank, because I understand that they have their own way of looking at it and they have their own perspective on it. And doing this will release me from an anchor, from a weight that has been strapped around my neck for however long you've been holding on to this thing. I assure you that if you can take that action, if you can make that active decision, and then you will have to remake the decision. You'll have to recommit to this decision over and over and over, because just because you decided about it one time that's not going to be the only time this upsets you. But once you make the decision, you will find yourself better able next time to say, nope, I'm not going to that place. I forgive him, her, them, and I'm going to continue choosing to do that. What I would love from all of you is, if you're brave enough for you to screenshot this moment right now, tag me and write down the forgiveness exercise result that you're putting down right now. Like, who is it? What relationship? What event? You can DM me if you're not as brave, and that's also good, because the accountability and the sharing will help you in the long run. All right, everybody. I'm going to get out of this car right now. I hope this has been useful for you all. Thanks so much. And again, share with me. Let's start employing this really simple and incredibly powerful tool in our lives. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend, since this is coming out to you on Friday. And I love you all. I will see you here next week. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful, and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.